In many ways, hedgerows define the English landscape, but the 500,000 kilometres of hedge that cover the country are not there by chance. Many of the first ones were planted to demark land ownership as boundaries, but then they were used in agriculture. They kept animals in or indeed out of fields, and they became an important part of the farming process. A lot of the hedges that we have been trimmed to the same height for many, many years, and they're now starting to degrade. There's a lot of stress on a hedgerow plant when you trim it to the same height. They get gappy at the base, stems start to die out, and eventually that hedgerow imperceptibly disappears. At the other end of the scale, a hedgerow like the one behind me, which has been let to grow up, could actually grow so tall and so wide that it may start to collapse, or indeed eventually turn into a line of trees. If a hedgerow is healthy, it needs to be trimmed to keep it tidy, but slowly, incrementally allowed to increase in height so it's not under stress. Then, after many, many years, maybe 40, 50, 60 years, it needs rejuvenating from the base. It needs to be taken down in some way so that new growth comes up from the base as a healthy young growth. We must encourage landowners to take on board the idea, the concept of the life cycle. And in this experiment, we're going to be looking at the different forms of rejuvenation.
We're comparing 5 different rejuvenation techniques, and these are a combination of some of the more traditional techniques and some modern techniques that have recently been developed. So first of all, we're looking at coppicing. This is where the hedgerow is cut back right down to ground level, and the hedgerow plants will regrow from the stumps that are left. The second technique that we're looking at is reshaping with a circular saw, which involves cutting off quite a lot of the height of the hedgerow and also cutting the sides. And again, the hedge will regrow from the areas that have been cut. The third technique that we're looking at is a traditional hedge laying technique. And here the hedge layer takes out quite a lot of brash from the hedgerow. The hedgerow stems are nicked near the base, but they're still left connected so that they'll continue to grow. The fourth technique that we're looking at is a new technique that's been developed recently called wildlife hedging. This is a very rapid technique, and it involves someone coming along and nicking the base of each hedgerow stem with a chainsaw and then knocking the hedgerow over with the digger. And this technique keeps the full volume of the hedge in the rejuvenated hedge, so it results in a lot of brash and a lot of potential habitat for wildlife. Now, the fifth technique is a sort of hybrid between traditional hedge laying and the wildlife hedging.
So what we're doing here is what we have nicknamed the conservation style of hedge laying. What it is really is it's a mixture of lots of the traditional styles of hedge laying that exist throughout the countryside. You've seen the more formal method of hedge laying, lots of stakes placed frequently along the hedge, maybe a top binding running along. And you may have also seen the Buckinghamshire wildlife hedge, where everything is pushed down reasonably roughly, providing a mass of habitat. This one's somewhere in between. What I'm trying to do with this relatively new development is to make the cut correctly at the base with a chainsaw or an axe. I will in a minute take this heel off, as we call it, so that new growth comes from low down. I put it over, and I've quite roughly placed it really. I just need to do a little bit of trimming up on it. It's perhaps a bit too much. Just sort it out, weave it in a bit. I can peg things down. I can apply a bit of pressure on it so that it is forced together. So basically what we're doing here is we're leaving quite a big volume of hedge. It's quite quick and cheap method, but the cutting at the base is good. That's the most important thing when you're rejuvenating a hedge really. You want the regrowth to come up from the base. So I'm just going to take the heel off now.
Well, a lot of money is spent through agro-environment schemes trying to influence how farmers and land managers actually manage their hedgerows. And the main focus of the schemes at the minute is to try and move farmers and land managers away from cutting their hedges on an annual basis. And the main reason behind that is because berries are only produced on 2-year-old wood. So what we ask the farmers and land managers to do through the schemes is to cut through on either a 2 or 3 year trimming regime. And what this research project aims to do is actually to quantify the berries that you get under each of those trimming regimes, and also try and assess what effect those trimming regimes have on the structure of the hedgerows. At the other end of the management scale, we've got hedges that have been unmanaged and left unchecked for many years. And what needs to happen to them is some form of rejuvenation to actually restart their life cycle. And there are many different techniques for doing this. And this project is going to compare and contrast these different techniques.
It'd be nice to leave that one.
Yes, I think you have to. I don't know what it is, do you?
It's a thought.